now available in paperback and ebook. The Man Who Rules the World. John Hayes must bring together men and gods to overcome a threat that seeks to destroy the planet. The Man Who Rules the World. Now available in paperback and e-readers everywhere. You often hear many of these Afro-American Negroes talking about some sort of black-brown coalition, like there is some sort of political alliance between Afro-American Negroes and Hispanics. Well, I can tell you from living here in the South Bronx that there is no black-brown coalition. I've lived here in the South Bronx for 42 going on 43 years, and there is no coalition whatsoever. Hispanics pretty much have all the economic and political power here in the Bronx. And they didn't take it from the Afro-American Negro. The Afro-American Negro gave it to the Hispanics in the community. I remember as a little boy growing up on 167th Street and Park Avenue when my neighborhood was predominantly black. I remember there being black-owned businesses in areas like 167th Street and Park Avenue and Washington Avenue. I remember when there were businesses in the 167th Street shopping district near the concourse. I remember when there were predominantly a lot of black-owned businesses in that area. And black people shopped with other black people. And what happened during the late 70s and early 80s is we got an influx of Puerto Ricans coming into the community. And the Puerto Ricans came in the community and they started opening up bodegas and other small businesses. And instead of the Afro-American Negro continuing to shop with his own people and trying to build his own political base, he started shopping with the Hispanics in the community, the Puerto Ricans and the Dominicans and the Cubans. And the Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, and Cubans pretty much started building an economic base for themselves with the black dollar. And from that black dollar, they began starting to establish a political base for themselves. And this is how a man like your Fernando Ferrer became the first Hispanic Bronx borough president, because your Afro-American Negro pretty much spent most of his time giving Hispanics not only the economic power, but then they went out and voted for the Hispanic candidate, thinking that the Hispanic candidate was going to look out for the interests of the Afro-American Negro. Well, I can tell you again, from living here in the South Bronx for 42 years, going on 43 years, no one has looked out for the interests of the Afro-American Negro. None of the people in the Hispanic community were looking out for his interests. They were looking out for their own. As they formed their own economic base, they began participating in group economics, not with the Negro, but with other Hispanics. And as that base built, they began taking on more political positions and then also getting other Hispanics civil service jobs. So they were pretty much taking over the economic base here in the Bronx and taking over pretty much the entire economy of the Bronx. Because when you go down an area like 167th Street in the concourse area, I remember again when most of those businesses were black owned. Now most of those businesses are Hispanic owned, Arab owned, Indian owned, and used to be Korean owned, but the Koreans moved to Queens. But the economic base changed from black to brown. So where's this coalition? It's just that the Afro-American Negro is too much of a coward to take the lead. And this is the big problem with the Afro-American Negro. He'll sit there and form coalitions with other minorities, not understanding that those minorities have their own agendas. And what they do is they use the Afro-American Negro as somebody to piggyback on to push their political agenda. And then when they get enough economic base, they start creating their own political platform. Because I've seen this happen with Hispanics here in the Bronx. They pretty much, what they did was, yeah, they formed a coalition with the Negro early on, but as they started getting their own economic power, they started creating their own political platform, and they started going to politicians with their agenda. Meanwhile, your Afro-American Negro, over the last 40 years, has not set up or established any sort of agenda for himself, and he has not established a platform for his political needs, nor has he maintained any effort to maintain his own economic base. What happens is, in areas like the South Bronx here, is that your Afro-American Negro, instead of continuing to support his own businesses, he runs to somebody else's business to help support them and help them move themselves forward at his own expense. That's why I can honestly say that there is no black brown coalition, because I've seen what happened here in the South Bronx over the last 40 years of my life. And what has happened is really sad. Your Afro American Negro, again, gave away his economic and political power. I remember as a kid when our school boards were mostly black. I remember again when many of the other people working in civil service jobs were black. Now most of those people in those jobs and those school boards are Hispanic. And that happened again because the Afro American Negro did not take responsibility in his own community. What happened was when he formed that black brown coalition, those Hispanics piggybacked on the Negro, and then eventually they leapfrogged over the Negro and created their own economic platform, their own political platform. Meanwhile, your Afro American Negro is sitting here doing stupid things like staying in this white liberals' welfare state, or he's out here selling this white liberals' crack cocaine. These are the two things that he did during the 80s that led pretty much to his decline. Meanwhile, your Hispanics were opening businesses, they were creating networks with each other, and your Hispanics pretty much were working on a political platform. That's how a guy like Fernando Ferrer became the first Hispanic borough president. And he did that, again, at the expense of the Negro, because the Negro thought, oh, if I support this Hispanic candidate, that he's going to support me. And we have not seen that, because we look at the Bronx over the last 35, 40 years, and it has become a political stronghold primarily for Hispanics. And they're not even thinking about this Afro American Negro at all. They've pretty much forgotten about him in the last, I'd say, 20 years, because they now control the economy. They now control the political platform. I mean, everyone who was used to be Jewish in the courts now is pretty much Hispanic. If you go down to the Bronx County Courthouse, county clerk was a Jewish man back as far as the 1990s, and when he retired, guess who took his place? That's right, another Hispanic man, because your Afro-American Negro didn't do his job, and he didn't take responsibility. He's always looking to hide behind somebody, and again, that is the big problem with this Afro-American Negro. He forms these coalitions with other minorities, but he does not stand up out front to lead his own cause. He's always looking for somebody to say something for him instead of saying it for himself. Now, these Hispanics will go out here and say exactly what they want. They will talk about what is important to them. They will lay out a political platform which presents their agenda to the politicians, and they will make that agenda pretty much clear and prominent, and that's why they get their needs met. Meanwhile, your Afro-American Negro is too busy cowering behind his black pastor, these pro-blacks, these civil rights activists, and all of these people are running around like Laurel and Hardy, bumbling and stumbling, sitting there trying to talk about what we need to do. Meanwhile, your Hispanics are pretty much setting a course for themselves, setting a direction for themselves, and setting up a series of goals for what they want to do. And they did that again over the last 35, 40 years. They met every goal that they wanted to meet. Now they're pretty much taken seriously by everyone, because when something happens in the Hispanic community, again, action is immediately taken because they have economic and political power. They have businesses in the community, they have prominent citizens in the community, and they have politicians they can go to get a recourse of action. Meanwhile, your Afro-American Negro, he has no one, because he just can't focus on what is a priority. He's always looking to stand behind someone instead of standing up for himself. If this Negro were to have stood up for himself back in the 70s and in the 80s, he would be the one pretty much with a solid economic and political base. Unfortunately, your Negro pretty much is too much of a coward to have the type of courage to go out here and demand better of his government or to take action in his government. And the saddest part about this whole Negro concept of a black-brown coalition is that he had the opportunity to create his own economic and political base, but he pretty much gave it away to Hispanics, and that whole concept of a black-brown coalition has just pretty much become Hispanics taking economic and political power in his own community. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.